Super Bowl 57 is set. It is the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, both teams recent Super Bowl winners, back again to try to get another Lombardi trophy. No shortage of storylines there, but we've got to break down everything we saw from Championship Sunday with Eagles 49ers and Bengals Chiefs. Coming up right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL on Twitter. Get those questions in for our Twitter Tuesday tomorrow. Probably some coaching news happening that we might be able to get into today, but clearly through the rest of the week, there's some teams that are going to be hiring some more coaches, and we've got some other news with coordinators moving around as well in the NFL. Tons of storylines with the Super Bowl, of course. Andy Reid Bowl, the Kelsey Bowl, as it's already being called, and, of course, the Senior Bowl coverage coming up here on Peacock and Williamson, because we'll be here with you every single day throughout. But, Matt, it is time to break down what we saw was kind of a nutty weekend of games. I do want to let everybody know first that today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 6 players. If they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on that entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That is PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. NFC side first, Matt. My 49ers falling to the Philadelphia Eagles 31-7. It turned out to be a blowout, and it turned out to be really nowhere near the game that it could have been due to the unfortunate circumstances of the 49ers not having a player that can perform a forward pass. I can't remember seeing a game like this one. This was one of the wildest championship level football games that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I've been an analyst now or in football for 25 some years in that neighborhood. And every year, maybe I just get older, not wiser, just older. But it becomes more and more apparent to me that winning a playoff game is harder and harder than anyone thinks. And, I want to get this game obviously in a second, but Mahomes doesn't have an ankle he can count on or any wide receivers. Burrow doesn't have any blocking, let alone your Niners, who don't have somebody that can throw the football. It's just such an attrition sport, and it's so dependent on everyone working as one, and the rosters aren't as big as you think, and the prep time isn't as deep as you think. I mean, I heard people talking today, like, why wouldn't the Niners just wildcat it up from there? Well, they've never practiced that. Why would they practice that? They have a great offense with quarterbacks. They didn't think they were going to be on Christian McCaffrey as their quarterback. So you and I were talking off the air, right before we hit record. I'm like, BP, how you hanging in there with this one? And I loved your answer was, I feel like we kind of got, to paraphrase, I feel like we kind of got cheated of what could have been a great game. And by no means am I taking away from the Eagles. I mean, they were the better team. They deserve it. I picked them to win. Heck, I bet on them to win, and I was happy I won my bet. But as a fan, we got cheated of what could have been a potentially great game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was more of a letdown than a heartbreaker, because what happens, I think, for fans, and look, there's only one team that makes the playoff that goes home happy. Every other fan base is really bummed. What went wrong? What do you have to fix? What happened here? And this was like oh man, you can't even really point to the coach. You can't point to the quarterback playing bad because he couldn't throw the football and he shouldn't have been back in the game probably. And yeah, you talked about that. There's a rather large laminated sheet in front of Kyle Shanahan's face. There was nothing on there he could use to win that football game. Throw it away. It's funny because Christian McCaffrey attempted that one pass as Wildcat quarterback, and it was like, well, there was the one play on the sheet for that.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. And it was like, well, oh my God. So just a disaster for the 49ers. And as far as breaking down the actual game with the Philadelphia Eagles, they were really good up front on both sides of the ball.
Yes, they were great.
Right.
Yeah,
And they played a clean game. And that's what they needed to do to win this. They didn't turn the ball over, they didn't get their quarterback killed, although I thought it was a pretty good plan, to be honest with you, from D'Amico Ryans and the 49ers with their pass rush plan, because they weren't going after Jalen Hurts. They wanted to corral him, keep him in the pocket, and Jalen Hurts didn't beat them in the pocket. Jalen Hurts had if you'd have showed me the box score and not the score and said Jalen Hurts is going to pass for 121 yards, 15 of 25 passing, and Devontae Smith is going to have 2 catches. One of them should have been overturned, and AJ Brown catches 4 of 8 targets. I would have said,
I'll take it. Right?
And they said, yeah, and the score's 31-7. I would have said, oh, the 49ers beat the Eagles 31-7. That's what I would have thought. Right. Because I thought the 49ers plan was good. They were completely undisciplined, though, with the penalties, and we can talk about the officiating, because there was clearly some bad officiating over the course of the weekend, and bigger stories about how to officiate a football game that seems like it's getting just more and more difficult and weirder and weirder every single year. But the 49ers were completely undisciplined, allowing the Eagles to have these crazy long drives, not getting off the field on 3rd downs or 4th downs, even though they were doing a good job on 1st and 2nd down, and to get themselves in a position to get off the field. They couldn't get off the field. Penalties, and the offense not being able to operate and continually giving the ball back to the Eagles. The time of possession was nearly 40 to 20 minutes for the Eagles in the football game. It was just, basically it was a game that, looking back, was over after the 2nd series of the football game, even though the Niners hung around, and there was the awesome Christian McCaffrey run, and that was tied after that run. But then, right at the end of the first half, with Josh Johnson in a quarterback, fumbling the ball right back, and then later on getting concussed himself and getting knocked out of the football game. And we don't really know the exact results from the MRI yet for Brock Purdy as we record this podcast, but it could be Tommy John surgery. It could be a couple weeks. We really don't know. And you hope both Josh Johnson and Brock Purdy are okay. But really, the takeaway was the Eagles were ready to played really good on both sides of the ball, especially on both lines, played a clean brand of football that didn't allow the 49ers to go win this game without a quarterback. But we were robbed of seeing what could have been a really, I think, great football game.
100%. And I'm not taking anything away from the Eagles. I mean, they were the deserved winner. They probably win this game. I don't know if they win it if nobody gets hurt or not. I mean, but they played great, and they're deserving to go to the Super Bowl. I have to take a personal note here, though. I mean, I told you this. I sent this tweet out pretty much as the game ended, and I want everyone just to listen to it. To me, it was just a factual tweet. I don't care who wins. I mean, I bet on the Eagles. I've been saying they're the best team in the NFC since day one. But here's the tweet. The Eagles get to the Super Bowl by beating a bad Giants team and this version of the Niners. They also had the easiest regular season schedule in the league. That's it. That's all I said. 3 facts, in my opinion. I have never gotten such response on Twitter. 99% of it negative. You're hating. You're jealous. You can only play who's in front of you. And those were the kind ones. I mean, every name you've ever heard in the world. I knew I was going to catch an arrow or two, but I just thought it was noteworthy. Because I think it's noteworthy, too, that if you just look at records, the Niners played the easiest schedule in the league. A lot of people had to correct me on that. I went off of DVOA, where Philadelphia was 32, the Niners were 31. My whole point is this was an easy road to get to the Super Bowl. That doesn't mean they don't belong. I'm probably going to pick them to win the whole thing. I think they're a tremendous football team, but helps is all I'm saying. It's so hard to win playoff games. If you can get a bounce or two, almost every Super Bowl winning team did. I mean, I even cited the 72 Dolphins. They went undefeated. They also played the easiest schedule in the league. That stuff helps. This league is hard.
Right. Yes. Oh, no doubt. There's and fans are fans, and they're going to take offense to
I appreciate the passion.
Right.
Holy cow.
But yeah, clearly this is one of I can't think of an easier path to the Super Bowl.
Right.
You play 2 playoff games. One was against a team that probably didn't belong in the playoffs, and the other team didn't have a player to perform a forward pass for most of the game. So,
right. And they earned it. Getting the 1 seed is a wonderful thing.
1 seed is really important. They were really good in the regular season to put themselves into that position to have a bye week. And then, but I think it does
both those teams out in the playoffs. So they didn't
right.
Get it right.
And they might be the best team in the NFL still. It's just they haven't had a chance to really be battle tested and prove that against, somebody. And we'll see what it looks like in the Super Bowl. But it is one reason to pause a little bit and say, okay, how do you even handicap this? Because I think as far as Super Bowl teams, we know the least about the Eagles than most other Super Bowl teams that I can remember.
Probably.
That's a fair statement. And it's not saying they're bad or good. Maybe they're great, and we just don't know that.
I think they're great. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just putting out 3 facts about how they got there that I thought were very noteworthy. It's an unorthodox path. Doesn't mean I hate your team, or I'm jealous. I mean, Twitter like that makes me crazy. But I think it is noteworthy that every help, every bounce, every bit of luck you can get is needed. I mean, rarely is someone the 85 Bears that's just heads and shoulders above everybody else in the league and just destroys everybody. I mean, you need a lot of luck and a lot of things to go your way outside your control. And good for Philly. They're getting it right now.
Absolutely. On the other side, it will be the Kansas City Chiefs that faces the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 57. They defeated narrowly with a Harrison Butker field goal nearly as time expired to defeat those Cincinnati Bengals. We'll talk about that game next. Today's episode presented by our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. You might ask, how easy can daily fantasy be? Well, PrizePicks makes it about as easy as you can. Not only can entries be made in 60 seconds or less, all you do is you pick 2 players if you want. You're not building a whole roster. You're not playing against a bunch of other people. You're not competing against anybody else. No sharks, nothing. It's just you versus the projections that are available at PrizePicks. You go to prizepicks.com or open the app and you see a couple of, say, Super Bowl projections. And you say, wow, I think Jalen Hurts is going to go way over these passing yards. And I think Travis Kelce's going to go way over these receiving yards. Boom, boom. That's it. And if you score more or less than those PrizePicks projections and you get those right, you can win up to 25 times your money because you can pick up to 6 players, which multiplies your winnings if you do get them all right. And PrizePicks offers projections all season long, no matter the sport either, because this is daily fantasy, right? So we're talking NFL. There's only 1 game left there, but there's NBA just about every day. There is Major League Baseball every day, all summer long. NHL, golf, college hoops, soccer, esports, NASCAR, MMA, boxing, tons of projections available, tons more even than I mentioned at PrizePicks. So download the PrizePicks app, go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50 more to play with. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day. Just remember, Locked On is heading to the Senior Bowl. Get inside analysis from the hosts that covered the NFL's next generation in college and find out which NFL draft boards these players will be climbing all in one location. Subscribe to Locked On NFL Draft for nightly live shows from the Senior Bowl on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 6 Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern this week. I'm pumped for Senior Bowl week, by the way, Matt.
Me too.
Very glad there is Senior Bowl week to get us through this extra week that I've talked about on the podcast that I can't stand before the Super Bowl because I'm already kind of annoyed by the storylines. Like the Kelce brothers talk a lot. Right, I've heard them a lot all year long. They do a podcast together. I don't really need more of them, and I definitely don't need 2 weeks straight of them. But that's what we are going to get. So we're gonna have to fill a lot of time with Senior Bowl stuff. But the Kansas City Chiefs,
and I'm aware that Andy Reid used to coach for the Eagles.
Yeah,
too.
It was really weird. I didn't know that until I woke up today. It was surprising to me.
But one thing though, I didn't know that I'm sure is going to become a topic, but my mind just doesn't work this way anymore. And I think it's a wonderful thing that my mind doesn't work this way. This is the first Super Bowl matchup between 2 African-American quarterbacks. I just don't think that way anymore. I remember when they would ask Doug Williams, have you always been a black quarterback or whatever it used to be, stupid stuff like that. Like, oh, this is the first one. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. There'll be a million more. Right. So I didn't know that little tidbit.
Yeah. And Patrick Mahomes, by the way, I think the best part of as was pointed out by one of our listeners last night on Twitter, that knows that I get annoyed by the extra week of coverage, and I'm the type of guy who mutes the commercials and mutes the halftime show. it's like I want to see the football. And if you come to my Super Bowl party and you try to shush people during the commercials, you are asked to leave. Because that's not why that is not why that game is on TV. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's just the way that I like football. Is I like my football, and I like my art separately. Because guess what? There's a lot better stuff to spend your time watching than commercials. And even if you like the artist at the halftime show, go see their concert because it's way better than seeing five songs at a halftime show that is probably being lip synced half the time anyway. So anyway,
but we got a good game in the AFC, and I didn't think it was going to go that way early on. Yeah,
and the best part of it that was pointed out to me is that Patrick Mahomes gets an extra week to get healthy because he was clearly hobbled out there,
yeah.
And it's just another notch for Patrick Mahomes in his legend, which basically is that at this point, Matt. I mean, we've had Josh Allen at the end of last year. It was like, okay, is it Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, then a gap, and then going into this game, it's like, okay, maybe it's Patrick Mahomes and it's Joe Burrow, and then maybe they're in their own tier. I think it's becoming pretty darn clear it's a Mahomes tier. Then we talk about the next tier, which is Allen and Burrow and some of the other quarterbacks in the NFL. Like that's the resume that Patrick Mahomes is putting together now, and seeing him run around and gut through an injury that would put most people on IR and probably would have put him on IR if this happened in week 7. Is pretty phenomenal to watch, and you can't really credit what the Eagles, Andy Reid, and Patrick Mahomes have done enough.
Yeah, and I don't know if I've said this on this podcast, and I haven't. If I haven't, it's because I'm not hot takey, and I don't try to be that way, despite my tweet earlier that got everyone wound up. But I kind of just like to call it like I see it. And yesterday helped affirm this, but I've thought it for over a year now. I think Mahomes is the best quarterback I've ever seen. I really believe that. I know his resume is not Brady's. I know he doesn't. I'd rather play against any quarterback I've ever seen than him.
I agree. Because of it's because it's everything. You think of what made Joe Montana great, And it's like, man, cool under pressure, really knows the offense and is able to do all the things he needs to do. Clutch player, clutch performer. Well, Patrick Mahomes does all that and then can do the craziest stuff with his arm that nobody else basically ever could do, except for maybe very few guys occasionally.
I used to say that or beat around the bush that way when Rodgers was at his best, that if we were picking up teams on the back porch or on the back sandlot, I would pick Rodgers over Brady or Montana or Elway. And the thing about Rodgers, I used to say was, if I line up all the best quarterbacks ever, his highlight tape is as good as any, but his low light tape is better than all of them. Well, Mahomes is the same way, but his highlight tape is better. It's even a little bit more sustained. I know it's a smaller time, but this 5-6 year stretch or whatever, where they go to the AFC Championship every year is unbelievable. I think I hate the word winner, but if the chips are down, I would take Mahomes over Rodgers, and playing through pain. And when they had no receivers.
Right. Yeah. They lost their best receiver too to start the entire season, and then lost guys from there too. I would put it this way.
Real quick, what's remarkable to me is this was supposed to be the Chiefs' rebuilding year. We're going to trade Tyreek Hill, get a bunch of picks, and free up some cap space. Maybe we'll win 10 games, come back the next year. Well, no.
And by the way, tons of, just a really great group of rookies that the Chiefs brought in that were performers that helped them get here, and so kudos to the coaching staff, the scouting staff, and clearly they built this thing well because they're good at identifying players and good at coaching them up. Spagnuolo doesn't get a lot of credit as a defensive coordinator. He gets enough credit, but he probably deserves even more credit than he gets on that side of the ball as well. But as far as Patrick Mahomes goes, I put it this way. If you are a defense and you have a lead or the game is tied, what quarterback do you not want to be on the other side with a minute left in the game? Patrick Mahomes is the number one guy I do not want to see on the other side.
Yep. I always look at it this way too, and that's kind of like a Hall of Fame conversation, is if I'm a corner, would I rather go against Isaac Bruce or Calvin Johnson? I'd rather go against Isaac Bruce. Maybe one is a better resume to get in the Hall of Fame, or Art Monk, he played forever. I don't want to go against Calvin Johnson for 60 plays ever. I don't want to go against Mahomes. I'll go against Bradshaw, Staubach, Stabler, name them from any generation before this guy. And both we're taking, I don't mean to take anything away from the Bengals, but I'm sitting here looking at the box score. Kansas City ran for 42 yards in this game. if you take away the Burrow scrambles, the Bengals ran for 41. I mean, it was just on both shoulders of two awesome quarterbacks without much help. I mean, Valdez-Scantling deserves a game ball. I didn't see that coming at all. Right. But the right side of Burrow's line and the whole line was just horrific. And they have to keep in tight ends and backs every snap to throw the ball. Mahomes can't hardly move and doesn't have anybody to throw to besides Kelsey. And they both still played awesome.
And in the end, it was a scramble that won the game for the Chiefs with a guy with a high ankle sprain. You know, he had enough.
And I feel so bad for Asai, by the way.
I know, Toradol helps. And of course, a big penalty, which I think we need to talk about next. And so this was sort of the praising Patrick Mahomes section of the podcast, and he deserved all of it. I want to talk a little bit more about this game and more about Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals next, and then we'll talk about the 49ers and the Bengals in later podcasts about what they have to do in the offseason, as we did with the other teams that had been eliminated in the playoffs, and a little question for you about some officiating in the NFL as well next. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, the newest sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network, the official sportsbook sponsor of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel. And we're super excited about our new sports betting partner because it is the number one sports book in America. FanDuel, if you're new to FanDuel, by the way, even better because so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy, including the no-sweat first bet for Super Bowl Sunday. Download FanDuel now, and you could bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win with the no sweat first bet. How about that? I've never really heard anything like that before. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line, point spreads, of course, who will score the first touchdown, who will score a touchdown period. You can build your own parlay, tons of prop bets for the Super Bowl, draft props growing all the time that I always love every single year. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and the website is super easy to use. Love it. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay. Patrick Mahomes, great. Andy Reid, great. The Kansas City Chiefs advance to the Super Bowl and finally get past what had been really the only boogeyman for them in Patrick Mahomes' career has been the Cincinnati Bengals. And so got past them, all the Burrowhead stuff. And Joe Burrow took a big back seat in, the Monday coverage of this football game, the post-game coverage, because they didn't win the football game. But man, this guy was under constant pressure in this football game from the start to the very finish, to getting sacked by the guy that you said was the factor in this game. Chris Jones got him to really kind of solidify this one. And I thought, game maybe could have gone into overtime if not for the penalty at the very end of the game, but they would have still had an opportunity to kick that field goal. Butker would have. It just would have been a longer field goal. But man, looking at the other side with Joe Burrow, the throw he made on fourth down to Jamar Chase going up to get the ball, double coverage. I mean, this is a really fun football team to watch, a really good football team, but in the end, it was their offensive line that couldn't sustain it and pretty much let them down in this one.
Yeah, we'll talk about what the off seasons entail, but I put this tweet out just a couple minutes ago. There's only 3 teams in the league with more cap space than the Bengals. They're in good shape. So this is a really formidable team, organization, program now led by Burrow. And I'll be honest, I mean, maybe even halfway through the first half, or at least the majority of the first quarter, I thought we might be seeing another blowout here. I mean, Burrow looks rattled maybe for the first time in his career, in my opinion. And I don't know who wouldn't be. I mean, he's getting hit left and right. The environment there is brutal to play in, which everybody knew was the case, but they didn't have answers for a while. And you got to give the Bengals defense credit for keeping the Chiefs in, field goal, because this could have been 20-0 before you know it. And it's 13-6 at the half. And one team was greatly outplaying the other. And as the Bengals do, as well as any team in the league, they made a lot of adjustments on both sides of the ball. And they regrouped, and they didn't let the thing get away from them because they were getting demolished. And most of it was because they can't block anybody. And I mean, I'm not even giving Burrow a hard time that he got rattled. Everyone in the world would have been. I mean, he looked like he didn't trust his environment. And if they threw the ball, it had to be like a bubble screen to chase. And, Kansas City was catching on quick to that. But even without a run game, they started to make plays. They started to come back. He started to get a little more swag. And you're like, this dude is hard to kill, man. He's a cockroach. Yeah.
Absolutely. Very hard to kill. You felt that wave come back the other way. It's like, man, are the Bengals going to do this thing on the road and go win this? And unfortunately, he didn't get that opportunity in overtime. And maybe they would have been able to do
overtime. Would have been awesome.
Overtime. But yeah, too big of a hole early with all the sacks, 2 interceptions. There's 2 sacks from Chris Jones in this game, one of them to seal it. Frank Clark, 1.5 sacks. Karlaftis, the rookie. We talked about how good the rookie class was for the Kansas City Chiefs. Karlaftis had a sack there. Willie Gay got in with a half a sack. And
Mike Diana's playing well for them. And some guys are stepping up. Yeah.
In the end, it was just too much. So great run. Really good season for the Cincinnati Bengals. They fall, though, 23-20 to the Kansas City Chiefs. As we mentioned, more on what they have to do, what the Bengals have to do in the offseason, what the 49ers will have to do in the offseason as we look ahead to next year. Of course, we've got some Senior Bowl stuff coming up later on in the week. One of the big things I've seen, and there's like some sour grapes here because you see it a lot with fans and you lose the game and they start talking about penalties, too many penalties, wrong penalties. They start sending you screenshots. They're like, oh, what about this? They didn't call this hold on this player. This player was offsides before this thing happened. And I hate doing that, but it did feel like officiating played too big of a role in both of these games. And you don't tune in for that. And I don't know if it's something that the NFL can fix, because the only thing they do every offseason is add more rules and more penalties and don't take any away. But I just hate the way a game ends like that. Chiefs, I wanted to see overtime, right? Just as a fan watching the game, I wanted to see overtime with the Bengals and Chiefs. And what you get is just a massive game-changing penalty on really what happened was a guy tapped him on the back out of bounds, and you have to throw the flag. It's going to be a penalty 100% of the time. The question I have is, can we start to have, if the quarterbacks are going to be coddled as much as they are in the NFL, and this is all year long, not even about this one play, can we have like a roughing the kicker running into the kicker situation where there's a 5-yard and a 15-yard penalty, or maybe it's not even an automatic first down if if it's not super egregious, like 15 yards every single time, it's just too big of a penalty to penalize the defense on what some of these plays are.
Yeah, and I urge everyone to go to ESPN.com and check out Bill Barnwell's piece, because he has, I'm looking where the title is here, 15 head-scratching plays from Sunday's games. And I just scrolled through it to see the headlines, and a lot of them are like, why is Andy Reid challenging on Kadarius Toney's catch where Toney didn't even think he caught it? Or the Devontae Smith catch where they run to the line, and some punt situations and a lot of coaching decisions and certainly a lot of calls. And the Asai one is the headline, really. But I felt so bad for the young man, more than anything, because you have to throw the flag in that situation. It was a clear foul. It stinks that was a determining factor. Maybe Butker would have made it from further. Who knows? I love your idea about, varying degrees of roughing the passer and things like that. And I also think deep down, is it smart to have an all-star team out there in terms of refs instead of just the best crew that knows each other?
It was, I got the feeling during the 49ers game, look, the 49ers were undisciplined and a lot of the penalties were deserved and they were completely undisciplined. But it was like, I don't need the referees to impress us by how good they are at throwing flags. And
you get some of that. Yeah.
And it's no, I think 100% of our listeners would agree that they would prefer a game with 0 penalties, right? Like that's the product you want. So the NFL should be looking at how to make officiating easier and how to get things right and how to have the fewest amount of interruptions during a game and fewer amount of calls that influence a game as possible, more so than how can we add more penalties to this sport.
Yep, and it always gets magnified in the playoffs. I mean, My mom probably wouldn't watch Bengals Chiefs if it was week 12. She'll watch every Steeler game, but
Yeah.
she's going to watch this. You're going to get a much greater audience. I'm just using some personal example. So should you put the flags in your pocket more because you don't want to turn away new viewers? I know you're not much of a hockey guy, but hockey in the playoffs, you get away with a lot more. You know what I mean? You beat the crap out of each other to the point where that gets frustrating too. Like, I don't want to see receivers getting mugged and you can't throw the ball and no flags coming out either. So it's a really difficult situation that I don't have the answer to, but the ref should never be the story, especially in a championship weekend or playoffs, or let alone 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. And it did feel like there was some over officiating in both those games. And you never like that aspect of it. So if you're going into league meetings in the off season, that should be a point of emphasis to me every single year. Is like, let's streamline this more and get things right. And even with it's funny because you said Andy Reid threw a challenge flag that didn't make sense. If Kyle Shanahan did that, would it have been a different football game? Just in case.
Right.
The catch wasn't confirmed, so throw the flag just in case. In the first half, who cares about a timeout in the first half? And so maybe that's a lesson that Andy Reid learned, from the game that happened right before him. Was like, you know what? I'm gonna throw a challenge flag anytime I can, just in case. If it's not confirmed, if something could help me by throwing this, I'm gonna throw it because it's more important than a tight end, or it's more important than a timeout. If I do get this. So,
but there's no question that these two games, more so than even pick the two weirdest games in week 10 or week 2, these were weirder than usual. And I'm sure because it means more and there's more tensions on the line, especially your Niner Eagle one was one of the stranger games I've ever seen.
That's one of the strangest games. The only game I can think of that's on par with that for how strange it was with the 49ers was way back in the early 2000s. Do you remember a game with the Giants and the 49ers in the playoffs that ended on a botched long snap from Trey Junkin, who had multiple bad long snaps in the game? And it was like just this weird ending. It was one of the strangest football games. For some reason, the Giants and the 49ers get together with some weird ones. They had another one in 2012 where Kyle Williams fumbled multiple kicks and fumbled them back to the Giants. And the Giants ended up beating the 49ers in that one. But
this was like the COVID Bronco game when they didn't have a quarterback.
It was that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Right.
And they at least knew it was going to happen. Imagine if
they at least prepared a receiver for the week. Right.
Yeah, second play of the game. Second play of the offense. So anyway, what a wild weekend. And the conference championship Sunday is always really good and really interesting and really wild and really intense and everything cranked up. And I think that's absolutely what we saw this Sunday. And it is the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 57. Of course, much more on that game, more on the teams eliminated, what they need to do to go into the next season to get to Super Bowl 58, potentially for the 49ers and the Bengals. Senior Bowl week, draft, off-season stuff, coaches being hired, tons more to come every day. Talk to you tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.